Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really focusing in on practical advice for anyone just starting with coding. Or maybe you feel a bit stuck and want to get better faster. We've looked at things like coding was hard until I learned these 7 things, debugging guides, readable code concepts, and breaking down problems. The goal, to pull out the absolute must-knows for beginners, those key mindset shifts.
Exactly. These aren't just tips, they're more like fundamental changes in approach. They make coding feel less like a huge mountain to climb and more, well, manageable, more intuitive. Think of this as a shortcut to being a more effective programmer, and probably a happier one too.
Okay, let's unpack the first one. A super common beginner mistake, trying to memorize syntax. I definitely did that. Felt like I had to know every single command by heart. Why is that? Well, why is it the wrong way to go?
Yeah, that's a big one. It's like trying to learn a language by memorizing the dictionary but skipping grammar. You might know words, but you can't form sentences. Programming logic, the core concepts, that's the grammar. Understanding why something works, how loops function, how data structures behave, that's key. The actual syntax, you can always look that up. Google is your friend there. But if you don't get the logic, knowing the syntax for if statements in 5 languages won't help you solve a new problem.
That makes so much sense. Focus on the why and the how, not just the what. The syntax is just the tool.
Precisely.
All right, moving on. Something else that trips up beginners constantly. Error messages. Those red lines of text. They can be pretty scary. How should we approach them? The sources say we shouldn't avoid them, but learn from them.
Yes. Think of them as helpful clues, not failures. They're guiding you. First tip, don't just stare at the word the error message highlights. Often, the real mistake is just before it, or maybe on the line above, like a missing colon at the end of a line, or an unclosed quote, or even just wrong indentation in Python. Super common.
Ah, the indentation struggle is real.
It is. Also, scan the message for words you recognize and definitely look for the line number. It narrows down where to look. And use your editor's syntax highlighting. If text you meant to be a string isn't showing up in the string color, you probably missed a quote mark.
Good point. Visual cues.
Exactly. And, if you're really stuck, ask someone. Seriously, a fresh pair of eyes catches things you've completely missed.
Okay, so embrace the errors, use them as clues, check the line before, look at colors, and ask for help.
Yeah.
Got it. Now let's talk about thinking like a programmer. We hear that phrase all the time. What does it actually mean?
It basically means structured problem solving or problem decomposition.
Huh.
The core idea is you take a big, messy problem.
Like building a whole application. Yep.
Right. And you break it down systematically into smaller, much more manageable pieces. This step is crucial. It brings clarity. It helps you write organized code. First, really understand the whole problem. What goes in? What should come out? Are there any weird edge cases? Then figure out the main parts like user login, data display, saving information. Then break those parts down again into tiny, tiny tasks.
How tiny are we talking?
Like really tiny. Think about explaining how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to someone or something that knows absolutely nothing. You have to spell out every single step. Get bread, open jar, use knife, spread. That level of detail.
Okay, wow. That really paints a picture. Break it down relentlessly.
Exactly. Implement one tiny piece, test it, then move to the next.
Right, build it up piece by piece. Now, the final piece of the puzzle for today. Readable code. Why is writing clear code so important, especially when you're just starting and maybe only you will see it?
But only you includes future you. And trust me, future you will have forgotten what clever trick past you was trying to pull. Readability is key. The goal is to make it super quick for anyone, including yourself later, to understand what the code does.
So how do we do that practically?
Use clear descriptive names for variables and functions. Not X or D, but maybe userage or calculate final price. Be specific. If you have a complex calculation or condition, break it into smaller parts. Use intermediate variables, sometimes called explaining variables, to give names to the step.
Instead of one giant line of math, break it up with clear labels.
Precisely. It makes the logic so much easier to follow. Also, try to limit how many variables you're juggling at once and where they can be accessed. That's called limiting their scope. Keep things simple.
Clarity over cleverness, essentially.
Always, especially when you're learning. But honestly, even for experienced developers, readable code saves time and headaches.
Okay, so let's recap the big takeaways for beginners then. First, focus on understanding the logic, the core concepts, not just memorizing syntax.
Right. Concepts transfer, syntax is easy to look up.
Second, treat error messages like helpful clues, not failures. Learn to read them.
Yep. They guide you to the fix. Use the line number, check before the error, Watch the colors.
Third, master breaking down big problems. Decompose them into the smallest possible manageable steps.
Think like you're instructing an idiot. Every single detail matters.
And finally, write readable code from the start. Use clear names, break down complexity, be kind to your future self.
Absolutely. Following these really builds confidence and independence. You start to feel like you can actually figure things out on your own, which, raises an interesting question.
How might picking just one of these ideas, maybe tackling error messages differently or really focusing on breaking down your next problem, how might that change your experience with your very next coding challenge? Could it turn that potential frustration into, well, actual progress?